Hey, yeah, what's up? This disciple Marchello Currence reign back up in this anti-Illuminati all day, anti-America all day, anti-telepathy all day, anti-gang stalker all day, anti-Satan all day. So, this message is basically going to be about me putting myself on child support and my ex-wife not taking the money. So, I put myself on child support, and years ago when I was working. It's just my test. This is my testimony to my character. This is my testimony to my nature. This is my testimony to me being a man. Because people, they just assume everything just by looking at you. They just assume that they know the whole story of your life. They feel like you probably ain't done nothing. You've been a man child all your life. They feel like they can sum you up in a matter of minutes based on looking at you or based on listening to what other people talk about. So it's important information, an important milestone to my character that people know that I put myself on child support. So here's what happened: my ex-wife didn't take the money. There was no excuse for her not to take the money. There was no excuse for her not to take the money. So her excuse was she had something to do. She had something to do, right? Which any boss would have understood if you told a boss, look, I got to go get child support from my ex-husband, from my son, right? And anyone would have understood that. When I finally did talk to her, when we were finally on talking terms, of course, me being the man I am, I'm gonna ask all the most primary questions, the most important questions. And I asked her, like, why didn't you take the money that I offered you? And she says, by phone, oh, well, I had something to do, which was a lie. That's why she didn't have nothing else to say about what she had to do. She didn't tell me what she had to do. But that was her bogus, lame excuse, and so it's men out there that do, put themselves on child support. And I received documents. I received documents that she did not comply. So there's documents with the state of Florida already that are already filed, that can be looked up, and I can request these documents if I have to. I'm pretty sure I can. Um, yeah, they sent me documents. The state of Florida sent me documents that she did not comply with taking the money for child support. This is not divorce papers. You know how that goes. Divorce, you have to wait a certain amount of time, and then for your ex-spouse to sign necessary paperwork before it goes through. But if they don't, it still goes through. But you know what I mean. If you can contact them and reach them, you're waiting for that mail to go through. You're waiting for that signed paperwork to come back to you from them. But nah, this ain't that situation. I waited for her to comply with child support money. Straight up money. No, it wasn't like hard about it. It wasn't nothing that, no, it wasn't a gang of paperwork she had to sign. I'm pretty sure five papers at most? 5 to 10 pieces of paper at most? And she couldn't even do that. And then when I finally talked to her, like I said, this is how I know it. This is how I know she had a crazy reason for doing it. Because she told me she had something to do. Now, what's more important than our son getting what he needs? Now, I think she may have also done it hoping that me and her would get back together. She might have held off on the paperwork or child support, thinking that would have been a nail in the coffin for us getting back together. That's my theory also. is that once you got an official separation dynamic as payments for child support, then people feel like, there's no hopes of us getting back together. We're actually separated. You're over here paying child support, right? So maybe that's what it was. But nevertheless, you should put your son first, our son first, and have taken the money not based off of your feelings, not based off of us getting back together, him needing money right now. So this is why I don't have any smoke. She don't have any smoke with me. You know why? Like the rest of y'all baby daddies got smoke with your baby mama. You know why I don't got no smoke with my baby mama? Because I put myself on child support. I put myself on it. While I was working at the hospital, that's when I was making decent money, working at the hospital. I put myself on child support. And she didn't. I received papers back from the state of Florida. I was in North Carolina at the time. I received papers from the state of Florida that she did not comply with child support. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. I have never met any woman in my life, for real, that has said, my baby daddy put me on child support. Put himself on child support, and I just decided not to take the money. I've never met that woman. Because it's never enough money. It's no such thing. When raising a child, at minimum, you could take the money and put it in a savings, right? If you don't want to touch it, you hate this person so much, whatever the case may be, you feel like you want to be an independent mom and all of that, right? Whatever the case may be, you still can take the money and put it away in savings so they can go to school, so they can go to college. And so I felt that she was also probably doing it to spite me so that I wouldn't be in the position of the man, in this situation. That she didn't want me to be doing what I needed to do as a man. She wanted to deprive me of that. Just malicious, man. And that's why her karma is so bad today. Today, up to date, she doesn't even have custody of my son. Up to date. She doesn't even have custody. In fact, she made us both lose custody of my son. She made us both lose custody. Her, not me, because we didn't live in the same state. She lived down in Texas at the time, and I was still in North Carolina at the time. She lost custody of my son twice. Actually, hold up. I had already lived in New York. I had already came up here to New York before she lost custody. And then she lost custody after when I came back from Los Angeles. I left New York, went to Los Angeles, and then went back to North Carolina. When I got back to North Carolina, 2014, by the end of 2014, she wrote me from jail concerning losing custody of our son. Yeah. So she lost custody that time, and then she lost custody twice when she was living with her dad, now having another child. She lost custody of 2 children. Once my son, I think someone called in on her or something, but she told me the first time she lost her son, our son, down in Texas, was because she was trying to work and she left him alone by himself, and people heard him in the motel or wherever she was at. That's the first time she lost him. The second time she lost him, she was living with her dad and his wife, which was her stepmom, and she decided to fight the stepmom right after Christmas, like the 26th. The day after Christmas. You're supposed to still be in the Christmas spirit. She goes and fights her step. Now, remind you, I'm not with her no more. This is years later. I filed for divorce. I'm the one that filed for divorce. I've already gotten my divorce. This is years later. Now, and my son is in her custody again after losing him the first time down in Texas. Now she's in Florida, in Tampa, Florida, living with her parents, right? Already sound crazy, right? When me and her had 2 apartments together. She's living with her parents. So she decides to fight this woman. I received paperwork from the state of Florida. They gave me all the paperwork. What she doesn't know is that I have paperwork, the whole transcript on all that happened, which led to her losing my son the second time. Okay? I had the whole transcript. They sent me the whole transcript of all she said to her and all she did to her dad, her stepmom, and the cop that was present. She told the cop and her dad that God was going to kill them. So that's all. If it wasn't from the fact that that wasn't a act that she was going to do herself, that would have been communicating threats to the police. And so they also said in this transcript, it talked about her fighting her stepmom, pulling her down to the ground, fighting her. It talked about the children being in distress, which one of those children being my son, and her daughter by some other guy that she didn't marry. The kids were saying, "Mommy, don't do it. Mommy, don't do it. Mommy, stop." They were pleading with her. So my son was actually crying and pleading with her to stop the fighting December 26, I'm sorry. And she was fighting her parents, fighting her stepmom. I don't know what about while she's there living with them. I don't know what she could actually be so feisty about. That's one thing that separates me from my generation. I do not sit up and want to fight people that I'm living with. I just do not do that. You know what I mean? Me and my stepfather got in one fight in my life, and I was 17 years old. I remember. And me and him had that fight one time, and I was a child. That was my excuse. And that was that. He understood me. I understood him. We never had another fight again. Grown people living with people fighting their parents is just ludicrous. Because how I look at it is you're on their terms. You're on their terms. Even if you don't respect them as your parents, you are on their terms. Technically speaking, they're helping you. You're in real time being helped by these individuals, whether you respect them or not, because obviously you don't. Obviously, your respect for them is in limbo, or you have a lack of respect for them. Okay, when it comes to that point, then it's just time to go. That's what I do. If you gotta fight anybody, literally, it's time to go. If you feel the need to fight, it is time to go. Okay? So this is what she did. She fought her stepmom and threatened her dad that God was gonna kill him and the police that was present. So she got my son taken away by that. CPS considered her a danger to her children. So to this day, she does not have custody of our children, of my son. My father-in-law, who I do trust because he's ex-military, he was in the Navy. So he has my son. Okay. So that's who has my son, an ex-military serviceman. And me and him had a great relationship. In fact, when my ex-wife wanted to leave me, on many times she did. She left in our last apartment that we had together. She wanted, when she left, me and her dad talked by phone. And he said, "Do you have to leave?" I said, "Well, I already got my bus ticket to North Carolina." He said, "I don't believe in that boy cry wolf stuff," meaning his own daughter. So he was on my side. So I had him on my side. And concerning the child support, I wanted to make sure that he knew, because I know him being a man of honor, serving in the military. Me and him had this great relationship. He was from the Navy branch of the military. So him serving in the military, he had this. I know he had honor codes. He has respect codes, all of that good stuff. So all character codes, all of that good stuff. So I knew that I could talk to him. So when she was locked up that first time when she lost custody of my son, when she was locked up, I wrote her a letter. And guess what? I wrote her dad a letter. Because I was sure that she did not tell him that I put myself on child support. Remind you, she's living with this man. She's been living with him. During the time, at least, when I did put myself on child support, so that whole time when she was dependent on him, because he was working, like last time I knew what he was doing, he was working as a manager at a grocery store. Not a lot of money. Not a lot of money. Less than $15 an hour. Pretty sure about that. Probably about $12 to $14 an hour. So she was depending on her dad, living with him. See how trifling this is? Living with her dad. Taking money off a grocery store manager. Most likely, I'm pretty sure she was getting money from him, crying and sapping about not having anything. Meanwhile, I put myself on child support. That was my knock at the situation, to take care of the responsibility as the father. That was my knock on the door. And I know for sure her dad did not know this, because her dad would have chewed her out as ex-military branch from the Navy branch of the military. I am sure he would have chewed her out for not going to get that child support money. So I knew it was my perfect opportunity when she was in jail, when she couldn't manipulate him. When she couldn't check the mail, it was the perfect time for me to sit down and write him a very good letter. And I let him know that I put myself on child support and she didn't take the money. And I know he discussed that with her. And that's why I have no problems with him. That's why he does for my son, because he understands his daughter. And once he knew I put myself on child support, that's all he needed to know. As a man. Because that's how men gonna think. Okay, you put yourself on child support, you did what you had to do, bro. Okay, I give you that. You did what you had to do. This girl is crazy. And up to date, right now, literally, she's receiving a check from the state. She's receiving a mental sick check. Now, some people make themselves mentally sick. See, what you assume is, oh, she was mentally sick the whole time. I don't know about that. I know that you can be unhealthy, you can make yourself mentally sick. And maybe she was being gang stalked. I don't know. Maybe she was. When I think about the history of me being gang stalked, maybe she was gang stalked too. But all I know is when she lost custody of my son, when my name was Googled, I Googled my name, because I do that just not as a narcissistic, conceited thing. I just Google my name. I want to see what's there. And I Googled my name one time, just happened to do it. Probably the Lord led me to do it. Googled my name and found out that my name had came up with my son, and it didn't say all what I did. It just said the state of Texas, and it had this child stuff. And anyone who is illiterate of like reading documents would have assumed the worst. If they Google my name, they would have assumed the worst. Like, oh my God, what did he do with children? And so I'm thinking that some employers denied me of a job, possibly, and other individuals seeing this information online and assumed everything, that I did something. And she was in Texas, and I was in North Carolina and also New York. So I was in between New York, Los Angeles, and North Carolina. So anybody that had seen that on me at the time would assume anything or whatever they thought. And but the paperwork said Texas, and I never lived in Texas. I've been through Texas, but I've never lived in Texas. Okay? So this explains, like, I just want men to hear this. I want women to hear this too, that there are some guys that have put themselves on child support. I am one of those guys that would go down in history. I am one of those guys that would go down in history for putting myself on child support. You can't take it back. It's too late. You can't manipulate it. It's too late. See how good I felt about that? It's too late. I put myself on child support. That's right. Somebody's going to know about this. Somebody's going to know about this. This is part of my resume. I'm serious. You put yourself on child support, hey, you can't be a bad fella now, can you? Now, after I put myself on child support, post putting myself on child support, I still sent money. Now, most men, especially a trifling man, would have said, well, I did what I could do. That's all I could do. And you couldn't really be mad at him. Even if he's trifling, you still couldn't be mad at him. Because he did the official thing he was supposed to do. If that relationship is over and y'all got a divorce, I divorced her. I divorced my ex-wife. Okay? July 8th, 2008, my paperwork went through for divorcing my wife, my ex-wife. But in the case of a trifling guy, you know, what could you say? Okay, you did what you could do. You officially did what you could do. You officially handled it how it's supposed to be handled. You know, being that you're not in that relationship no more, you know, you handled it like you supposed to. By you know, considering you don't know if she's going to be malicious, you don't know what she's going to do. She can say she didn't get the money, whatever. You're going to do it by book. Okay? Did that. And she didn't take the money. I received paperwork from the state of Florida confirming this, which means those paperworks are archived into their system. Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. It didn't just go away. It's still there. And I'm pretty sure she had a certain amount of time to comply. It wasn't just like, well, you got 5 days to get downtown. I'm guessing she had like a month. I'm guessing she had 90 days. I'm guessing she had 90 days. When it's all said and done, she probably had 90 days to comply to that. Even more, maybe. But definitely, we can all agree she at least had 30 days. She at least had a month after receiving that letter for child support payments. See, she just didn't like that it was coming at her. That's an immature person. She looked at how it was a negative thing, like an immature little brat, like 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 I'm getting the last say so or something like that. That's how she looking at it, as a malicious act. That's how she looking at it. Life ain't no game. And now her karma is so bad. She got 2 kids, and she ain't with neither one of them. The dad, my ex father-in-law has the kids now. He has them now as I speak. Okay, she made us both lose custody. The natural custody that I had, that is gone because of her. Now, the history of me and this woman, I'm gonna tell you how we met. I'm gonna go all the way back to the origins. You know how the movies say the origin, they make origin movies. I'm gonna go back to the origin of this whole situation. So at the time, I had just moved down to Tampa, right? I had my first job, I was working. This was 2003, so this was 20 years ago. So you see, I ain't no young man. I'm a young man, but I'm not. You know what I mean? I mean, it's 20 years ago when I met this woman, basically, almost 20 years ago. This year will be 20 years ago that I met her, right? So I was down in Florida, 2003, and I had a job and everything, right? So I was working at this all-you-can-eat buffet down in Seffner, Florida, in the same parking lot of the cash and carry down there. So I was working down there and everything, just doing, I'm just getting in this new city. I'm used to traveling. I've already lived on the West Coast. I've already lived at this point in Los Angeles and Seattle. And now I'm here in Tampa, and I got a new job, and I'm working. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. So I'm living at a shelter, but I'm working, and this shelter takes me to work. So I'm working from a shelter. I used the shelter as my base to get up on my feet, but I'm working. And this particular shelter is a Christian church. It's not some big mammoth shelter. It's a church. It's literally a church. So, but in this church, there is living quarters at the top of the church. So you have the sanctuary, and then you have stairs, and then you have a whole floor that is living quarters for the shelter people. And it's not a lot of people that can be in there. It's probably like roughly maybe 50 to 80 people in there, something like that. So I would even say 30 to 80, between 30 and 80 people there at all times. So her stepdad, my ex-wife's stepdad, was there. And I just kind of overlooked him because I was 22 at the time. I was 22 years old. He was older, and I just didn't have any, connection with him. I always connected with older people, but particularly him, I don't know. It was just, me and him just never connected. Anyhow, his stepdaughter started coming up there, being my ex-wife. She started coming up to the shelter church. And I seen her, and I'm going to be honest with you. I thought, man, she looks like the girl version of me, right? That's what I first thought. But I didn't say anything. I just left it alone. I didn't think nothing else of it or nothing else of her. So the older guys in the shelter, you know how men are. They seen someone around my age, and they're trying to play matchmaker. So they see me, I'm the youngest guy in the shelter. At this time, nationally speaking, there was not a lot of young guys in shelters. That's why I'm very mature, because in America, I was going around to these shelters, and I was the youngest guy there most of the times. And this time I was too. These days, these kids all in the shelter. But This was 2003, so it was a little different. Right at the top of the millennium, and it just wasn't a lot of kids in the shelter. And so I was the only young guy there at this particular church shelter down in Tampa. And so, so all the older guys, being the youngest guy, and they seeing this young girl, which was too young for them, come up there. And they see, they thought, okay, young man, young woman, let's put them together. Ooh, they could be together, right? So after so me and them start. They start trying to put us together, talking about we could be together, and talking about the guys was actually doing this. So they start trying to play matchmaker. So her stepdad drove around he drove the church van for the church shelter. And so one day, after hearing all this hoopla about me wanting to be with her and wanted me to talk to her, he rose up in the church van, and for whatever reason, I was just conveniently standing out on the side of the church, and he just drove up. Maybe it was for me to help with the food, because the church van would have the food from a different ministry called Metropolitan in Tampa. So Metropolitan would supply our food, right? Whatever they was having, they would give us some in these brown containers. So maybe that's what it was. They wanted me to help with the food. So I was just standing there this particular day when her stepdad wanted to talk to me about his daughter, me dating his daughter. Remind you, I seen her a couple times or whatever. And but I hadn't said anything to anyone. I didn't say I liked her. I didn't say she was cute or anything. And I just had my own thoughts. So her stepdad rolls up in the van and says, I heard you want to talk to my daughter. This is what he told me. And I'm like, I'm just standing there. I know this is not true. So before I could even respond to what was a lie, he said, well, I'll hook it up tonight. So he did. He gave me her number, and I had a cell phone, or I think that I used his phone to talk to her. And so I start talking to her on the phone, and I talked about my relationship with God and my music and everything, my dreams for being a musician and doing Christian music. And we just had a very pleasant conversation. So after that, we decided to meet up. She had a car at the time, which was appealing to me because she was really mature. She was going to college. That was even more mature. So she was in college, she had a car, and she was working. So I was already impressed by a young man's standard. At 20, me being 22, and she had a car, and she was in school, taking up business administration. So she was in college taking up business administration. She had a job, and she had a car. So I was impressed. And she was a young woman, so I was impressed. So we started talking, and then we fell in love. We started hanging out every day. There was this park right down the street, directly in the neighborhood, in the back of the neighborhood of this church shelter. So we started going down there to this canal, which was it was a beautiful place to start to get to know someone. It was a running, jogging path on it that went around the canal from one bridge to a veteran park. There was a veteran park at one end of the canal that was open to the public. It was a veteran park at one end of the park that was open to the public, and then there was a bridge, like a pass over bridge over the canal water. So there was a huge path, cement path that went from the Veterans Park to the bridge around the canal. So around that sidewalk, right, that path was like orange trees. We would back then in 2003, we were knocking fresh oranges. This is Florida living for you. We was not knocking fresh oranges off the tree, fresh grapefruit, and so that's how we met. We would eat at Subway. She would come pick me up, and we would go down to Subway, and we would just sit down at the park. Like I said, she was taking up business administration, and I was just working. I was working at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Meanwhile, I had plenty of talent, everything like that. So I was just very excited about the future concerning my talents. So remind you, just in case you may think I'm just another aspiring artist, my music has been heard by Havoc of Mobb Deep. So he's reached out to me before, back in 2012. I got the information, the tweets. I put it up on my Facebook where Havoc, it was the real Havoc page too. And he had see, back then, this was 2012. So this was before all these fan pages and all these fake pages. And the musicians and stars were more approachable because they were enjoying being on social media, and they just wanted to interact with the fans, and they were more excited about finding talent in it, how accessible it was. They were wanting to use this tool to find talent. So that was their position then. Now these days, you can forget about it. It's just too many American Idol type people or artists these days. But back then, it wasn't really, all of that going on. At least it didn't affect social media or artists not taking artists seriously because of the American Idol age. So Havoc from Mobb Deep wrote me and said, he texted me. He said, I see you. He said, I see what you're doing. He said, he gave me his number, and he said he was having some type of show and that he would like me to come up like that. So he was like, see you there. But at this time, right, where I had this big break, that was probably my biggest break, was Havoc from Mobb Deep. I had this big break. Like, he was greater than anybody I was trying to pursue. Because at first, I wanted to go with Bone Thugs, and I actually talked to Crazy Bone, but it was, it was during a time where he had a passing in the family, and it's just bad timing. I sent him my music. He had this program. He paid people you have to pay him $60 to send your music to this program. And so that being said, I sent him a track, and he had a passing in his family. And so they shut it down when I sent him my music. This was back in 2012 as well. This was at the top of 2012. And so there was this big thing between me and the staff. The staff was telling me that they was going to review my music, and Crazy Bone was going to review my music before he went back out to touring or doing shows or whatever. I was a young artist at the time. I call it touring. Tomato, tomato. You're touring, doing shows. You're basically touring just wherever you are. Yeah, I mean, you're doing shows. You're touring, doing shows. So they was like, well, he's not touring. But you know what I mean? He's going out to do shows, basically, in essence. And so for them, it may have been a technical difference. But for me, they knew what I meant. I just was articulating to them that Crazy Bone was supposed to listen to my music before he went back out, right? I clarified that, and I clarified them telling me that. So this is what happened with Crazy Bone. Like I said, I sent him my music. He had this program called the Fast Track Program, and he would listen to your music for $60. And if you If you were good, he will sign you, and if you were not so good, he would give you constructive criticism. So that being said, I went to the studio, put a whole album together, and it was for professionals too, because it was this there was this studio that had a slot of time on BET in my city in North Carolina. So I seen them and they had a slot of time. It was like, come through. And I'm like, shoot, all right. So I paid them my money. At this time, I was living with my Bayesian girlfriend from Barbados, and she funded me going to the studio. So I went to the studio, got all my songs together, everything, all of them good and crisp, good professional and everything. Then I sent Crazy Bone one of those songs from the album that I did. I do whole albums. I don't do songs. So I'm old school. I go and do a whole album. So I did a whole album and I picked like a song from the album that I thought would be lyrically impressive. Not really based on the sonics, not so much based even on the hook of the song. I just wanted him to hear the lyrics, the power punches of my bars, right? Which was crazy. It was just stupid sick, right? So I sent it to them and they confirmed that they got it. And maybe the staff was player hating. Maybe they was. Only God knows. Because they did hear it, and maybe they just felt like they was trying to get on, because particularly with Bone Thugs, they got a lot of people trying to get on around them. Maybe it might be, that's what I noticed. Most of their fans are, I'm put it like this. This is based on what I'm trying to show you. Most of their fans are people that are trying to get on. You know what I'm saying? With them particularly. So I don't know if the staff was one of those people. And they just felt that, I was gonna blow. But whatever it was, man, they gave the staff was responsible for giving me bogus information about Crazy Bone listening to my music after he had someone pass away in his family. See, that's what happened. Once I sent them the music, then someone passed away. His mother passed away, right? And I was sensitive to that. I posted her obituary on my Facebook page, which is probably still there, obviously. And I showed my condolences properly in the middle of them listening to my music. So it wasn't that I didn't acknowledge it and I didn't understand and everything like that. I posted his mom's obituary. You know what I'm saying? So I totally understood. However, his staff was telling me, meanwhile, that he was going to continue to listen to my music, in which what should have been done was they should have shut it all down. They should have just shut it all down, say he had a passing, his mother passed, everyone would have understood, and that would have took all the situation, all the confusion away, all what he could not do away. But they didn't do that. Instead, they kept telling me, the staff kept telling me, he's going to listen to it, he's going to listen to it, he's going to listen to it. Now, he done had a death in his family, his mom's passed away. And they still telling me, he's going to listen to your music. So I'm obviously following him on Twitter like I should, as a professional person. So I see that Crazy Bone tweeted that he was going out to, I think, Switzerland or somewhere across seas. And I'm like, okay, he's about to leave. Now I'm checking if he listened to my music. Okay, so I've dealt with real situations in the music concerning my music. I'm not no American Idol artist. Okay, let's get that understood. Okay, so they kept telling me, this staff of Conquer the Industry staff, Fast Track staff for the Life Entertainment, they kept telling me, oh, he's going to listen. So it didn't happen, and he went somewhere. He went somewhere across seas. So I spazzed out, like I should. I'm like, yo, you told me he was going to listen. Now, keep in mind, I already understood that he had a passing in the family. I've already showed condolences, right? So after he left, I'm like, yo, you told me he was going to listen to my music. And so it just was a back and forth to me being the man I am. When it comes to my music, I'm serious about that, bro. Like, I don't play no games when it comes to that. And it wasn't nothing concerning him. It was the staff. So I felt like I needed to talk to him personally. So I went to his Facebook, his Facebook page, Cray Jack, your boss. That's what it's called, Cray Jack, like as in Crazy Jackson. That's one of his aliases. So, but it's short for Cray. It's shortened down to Cray Jack, your boss. So I went to that, and I know that's where he's at all the time. And I said, man, look, I respect Crazy Bone as a person, but I do not respect him as a businessman. This is what I said. Because he's on there, he's in good spirit. I felt it out. It wasn't like he was moping around. I'm sure, you know what I mean? I'm sure he was sad, okay, concerning the passing of his mom. But what I'm trying to say is he wasn't in a bad mood, right? So that being said, it wasn't like his post was like, about, lowly things, sad things, talking. If somebody's sad, they're going to talk art. If somebody's not in good spirit, how their posts are going to be based on that, right? So it wasn't like he was like that, right? So so it wasn't like I was giving insult to a person that was in pain. That's what I'm trying to say. That was moping and sad, and and in mourning. Basically, I was not communicating with someone I felt that was in mourning. I didn't feel he was in mourning because of his posts, the way they were talking about this, that, and also they were still going out and doing shows. So if somebody's out doing shows, right? If they're doing shows, you're going to think that they're in good spirit. So subconsciously, I know he's approachable. So I'm like, okay, this, I respect the person of Crazy Bone, but I do not respect the business person. And Crazy he said my name. He was, one thing I will say, he was respectful enough to say my name, right? He said, Marchello, he said my name. He said, Marchello, you should have understood. That's what he told me. He said, didn't you get your money back? He said, Marchello, you should have understood. But I was like, but your staff was telling me this, that, and the third, though. So it wasn't that I didn't understand. It was miscommunication between me and the staff. Okay? So that's what happened. And then ultimately they just returned my money. And you know what I'm saying? And I still supported them for years from afar, as far as listening to their music, posting their music, likes, and all of that kind of thing. But that's what happened with Crazy Bone. But people will consider Havoc, no disrespect to him, but people would consider Havoc from Mobb Deep as more of a big break, a huge break as far as hip hop and everything like that. For the most part, overspread. Everyone knows Havoc from Mobb Deep, and he came to me about my music. I didn't come to Havoc, in a program or trying to send him my tracks or anything like that. I may have shot him a track, I may have, but whatever the case may be, he came to me and gave me his number and everything, and told me to come to a show. Now that's Havoc from Mobb Deep. So I consider that the greatest acknowledgement, because Crazy Bone really didn't listen to my music. Havoc did. Havoc did listen to my music from Mobb Deep, and he liked it. He said, I see you, man, like that. He said, I got this show coming up, and he gave me his number. He's like, see you there. So it was all love, And my music was just, at that time, I had evolved to just straight lyrical music. That's probably why he liked it, because it wasn't talking about street stuff. It wasn't talking about any of that. I had evolved into the artist of where I felt like MCing was most important. MCing was way more important than talking about thug life and talking about anything else. You know what I'm saying? Even females. It was more important to me to show my MCing lyrical abilities. And Havoc picked up on that. Havoc picked up on that. So, salute to him. for like showing me that respect. You know what I'm saying? That's the person that showed me respect as far as my music. So now you take me more seriously as an artist. I'm not some aspiring American Idol artist that's just shriveling up in his room, thinking about his dreams that he was conjuring up in Kansas. Even though I never lived in Kansas. Okay? So, I got taken seriously. But at the time with the Havoc situation, I was living with my brother. I was living at his house. And so we have no Wi-Fi. And it just was bad timing. Total bomber situation. And if I had hit him up, right, he didn't Havoc. If I had hit Havoc up, he didn't hit me up right away. Which explains why, I didn't have Wi-Fi. When I was living with my Bayesian girl from Barbados, I had Wi-Fi. That's how I got in contact with her. That's probably how, because that was that same year. But me and her got burned out of an apartment. Somebody in the apartment complex was trying to get high and using candles for shooting up and burned down the whole place. So then from there, I went to live with my brother, separated me from my girl. Well, I decided at that time, because of where our relationship was, it just was best to go our separate ways. We had no connection. It was just so awkward. Even when we got the room after getting burned out, we wasn't even talking. So it was just like that's how it was, even after that happening. So maybe she was sad at the time. I don't know what it was, but we already didn't have any connection. And I just thought it was a good time for me to go stay with my brother, because he had his wife had left, which he made her leave. So with his newborn son, he forced them out his house. So, she made a video, his wife made a video crying like she didn't want to leave. And me and him was crying together watching the video. So that's where I was at, at the time when Havoc hit me up, on Twitter. So I got the receipts to prove it and everything. So he can confirm his number and everything. So, that's how it was. So I just had to let that be known as far as my talents and who I am. So at the time when I met my wife, my ex-wife, she was going to school and I was an aspiring artist. You know what I mean? And so we started hanging out and everything. Me and my ex-wife, at like I said, she had a car, so we would go down to this canal and we would hang out there and just hang out in her car, and talk. And the first red flag from my ex-wife was when she said, "When you get to know me, you're not going to like me." Now, from a guy's perspective that's already feeling this chick, I'm already feeling her. She got something going on. She's in school, she got a car. I'm overriding that. I'm like, nah, what you mean? I'm that kind of thinking. What you mean? Nah, you ain't gonna like me when you meet me, when you get to know me. Now, she told me this when I first met her. This is what she said about herself. This was without an argument. This was before we even had any fights or arguments. And she just volunteered this information. So, whatever the case may be, we just kind of left each other alone. Like after a month or so of that. After a month or so, back and forth, I was still working. So the guys at the job, these black guys at the job, I'm a young man, so I'm telling my business. And I'm talking to them about my girl and everything. And they like, "Man, you better not leave that girl alone for the holidays." They were like, "You better not leave that girl alone for the holidays." So I listened to them. That's how we got back together. Is I listened to these dudes at my job and that I'm talking to. And they was like, "Man, you better not leave that girl alone for the holidays." And I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, all right. So I went back to her based on that. But the reason why I was separated from her, because God knew something that I didn't know. She went back and seen this other guy before me that she knew. This other dude, right? And God knew it, right? Of course. And that's during the time. That's why we separated. We separated during that time. After she did that, maybe she separated. But whatever reason, I separated from her too. I think I may even had told her. But whatever the case may be, that's what it was about. Her seeing some dude behind my back after me and her had all this time together. At the canal, eating together every day, eating Subway every day. That was our ritual. We would eat Subway every day. It was one right up the street at a gas station from where I was living on MLK in Tampa. So we went up there and got Subway, and that was our ritual. But like I said, she went behind my back and seen this guy. Then she confessed it to me later. You know what I'm saying? But then, so we got back together, right? After I came back to her, listening to these dudes at my job, at my all-you-can-eat buffet job in Safety, Florida, right outside of Tampa. So we got back together, it got more serious this time around. And, you know, and she decided to tell her dad, which is, like I told you, ex-military, Navy. She decided to tell him she tried to get me to live there. Now, remind you, I'm a Christian. So I'm not going to be with no woman if I'm not going to marry her. Right? So her dad, she kept talking to her dad, telling him, I'm oppressed at the shelter. That's how she's putting it. And I'm 22, so he may have had mercy. He may have felt like that too. Now that I know how young 22 really is, he may have thought about a 22-year-old kid at a shelter. Man, that's not cool. Especially him being in the military and going around probably around the country. He probably thought me being at a shelter at 22, that's pretty depressing. You know, so he decided to let me live with him. So I moved in with her dad, without marrying her. And me and her living in the same house. The dad, the mom, okay, maybe the mom kind of, I ain't saying a pushover, but the mom is kind of more easy. She goes by emotion and care. This was the dad. It's unheard of for the dad to let you move in with his daughter. But I feel that it was twofold. The reason why it was twofold, it was because he was making up for lost time, and he had just got back with his daughter, and he didn't want to lose her, and he wanted more quality time with her. Also, I think that he was truly impressed by me as a young man, because I had already, as a Christian, I had already been to LA, Seattle. I was ministering, I was witnessing out and winning souls on the streets of Seattle before I even met him. So I was already a straight up spiritual soldier already. And me and him used to even, we were so close that my wife she would pull me by my hand out of his room, because me and him would talk about the word of God, and we would take communion together in his room and everything. That's how close me and my father-in-law was. And when I left her, one time I left her, he said, I don't only miss my son-in-law, I miss my brother in Christ. This is her father. So he said he don't only miss his son-in-law, he misses his brother in Christ. So that's the relationship that we formed on our own, besides her, without her being there. And she would get jealous and pull me out of his room with her hand, which you should be glad I'm around your dad like that. But I think he was already thoroughly impressed when he first met me. Him being ex-military, he probably had eyes to see that I was a very valuable person. So he let me live there. I let him hear some of my music. I probably let him hear one of my raps. You know, especially when you're young, you want people to hear what you do. I probably did, and he let me live there and everything, and so that's where I started from with her. I started living with me and her was living with her dad, and it was a beautiful thing because we were all Christians. And we would eat together, you know, talk about the Lord. Like I said, I would be in his room. I would take communion with him and everything like that. And it was just a very warm thing. I would make my music, make my beats. I had my keyboard, you know what I'm saying? And I would just make my beats there and everything. And but she made a mistake. While we was living there, she went behind my back while I'm living with her dad and seen some other dude. It's always got to be something, and it's always got to be something, don't it? And that was the beginning of the end of our relationship. She has seen this guy on her routine, where I don't know how. It probably was satanic. She seen this dude on her route, this dude who she used to be in a relationship with. She used to be in a relationship with him in high school, right? And so they were kind of physical. They did a little something, some little foreplay or whatever. And me being a spiritual person, I just felt that it was a relationship that should be off boundaries. So we had already established this. Remind you, we had already established this relationship as out of boundaries for our relationship. I understand people can be friends, this, that, and the third. I wasn't jealous. I just felt that because they had some physical contact and they had a relationship, that it just wasn't a good idea for her to have that relationship. So she was cool with it. She didn't buck against it. She didn't feel any kind of way about it. So after that, months later, she sees him in her routine. I guess someplace where she gets something to eat, or the library. It might have been the library. She used to go there a lot to go at that time, back in 2003, for emails and everything like that. So you could get on the internet. Most people used to go to the library for the internet more back in that time. So she did. And I think this is where she saw him. Whatever the case may be, that's where she got tempted from, seeing him in her routine. So he didn't do nothing. I don't think he did nothing to push up on her. She entertained the thoughts of going to see him. So one night she plugged up an old phone, and I noticed it. One of those big, thick Nokia phones, because back then, this is 2003. So the older phones from that time was the big Nokia phones. So she went and plugged it up, and I noticed that. I noticed it the night before she went to see him, and she was getting his number. This is why I didn't have respect for her because of this, because it was too much effort that she put into it. She charged up the phone all night long while I'm there laying with her. She got the phone charging to get his number out all night long. We laying there together. That's number one. So she gets the number out and calls him the next day, obviously. When she gets off of work, she comes home, takes a shower, and says, I don't think we're going to make it. Now, remind you, I don't know what she's going to do at the time. At the time, I do not know what she's going to do. Okay? So I didn't know. I just sound like she was arguing like she does any other time. She kisses me. She goes and buys new clothes from the mall, though. She buys new clothes from the mall that we don't have. Remind you, we living with her dad. We don't even have money for that. She goes and buys new clothes, new jeans, and a shirt from the mall, from this express store in a Tampa mall. She goes in a Brandon mall. So she goes, Brandon is where her dad stayed at the time. That's a little suburban neighborhood right outside of Tampa. It's a nice subdivision. All right. So anyway, she goes and go get this outfit or whatever. And she comes home, take a shower, and goes to see this guy. Remind you, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what took place, right? Anyway, so that being said, she comes back and tells me later on that afternoon, like later on, she comes back and tells me the whole thing. And that's what got my life off track the first time. So she tells me, oh, she went and saw this guy, the guy, and I knew who he was, this guy named Milo. She went and seen him behind my back. And she tells me, he's not you, he's not even like you, but that's more of an insult. You go downgrade to somebody who is not better than me in your perspective. That's worse. That's not better. And she was just saying, he's nothing like you and all of this and all of that. And she told me that his parents was at the house at the time, so they didn't even do anything. But what if the parents wasn't there? Anything could have happened. So from that point, I tried, when she told me all this information, I processed it, I forgave her. Now, remind you what made it so trifling is that we were living with her dad. That's what made it so trifling, that I'm at her dad's house while she's going to see some guy. It's one thing for me to be living on her terms or her living on my terms, or we're living together, right? Both paying bills, and you go see some guy. But it's another thing for me to be living with your dad, not my dad. That's even different. If it was my dad, and you go see some guy, because you don't feel part of the family or whatever. You go see some guy, whatever, right? No, I'm with your family member. I'm with your dad while you're going to see some guy. I'm literally at your dad's house. That's what made it so trifling. So I stayed for like a month and some change, and it just wasn't working. So I just left. I went back to North Carolina, bettered myself, got my GED, because I got kicked out of high school for pulling out a weapon on the guy. I got thrown out of high school for that reason. So I didn't go back to high school because I pulled a weapon on some dude. So I after, me and my ex-wife, separated that first time, I went back and got my GED and everything, was working once again at this thrift store called Value Village off of Freedom Drive. I was working there. And then she wanted to get back together. You know what I'm saying? So we tried again, and we got our own apartment. This was our first apartment together. Now, me living there with her, again, I was working again. I left a job where I was working. My mom didn't want me to go. I was doing good. I got my GED and everything. My mom didn't want me to go back down there. But I did, because I had to see if it could work. You know what I'm saying? When you've already invested that much time into somebody, you got to give it your all. You got it for your own closure. See, I got proper closure. She don't. Because I know I did all I could do. She wasn't leaving other states for me. I was leaving other states for her. So I gave it my all. I went back down there, started working again. And just for whatever reason, it just got off track again. So my landlord was this Irish, thick mane, redhead, hippie kind of woman, very cool woman. And I think we were just paying like $500, $600 a month. It was straight. And so I was working at the plaza that was like right across the gate from the back of the plaza was like right where my gate was. So the garbage cans of the plaza was right across the gate from where I was living. Right outside my door was the gate and the dumpsters for the plaza right there. So I found a job in that plaza. I found 2 jobs in that plaza, being the guy I am. So I had two jobs in the plaza right across the gate from where I was living. And my landlord would see me run to work at the last minute. I mean, I'm right there. Why go 20 minutes early? So I would run there at the last minute for whatever reason. I mean, and she saw me do that a lot. So when my ex-wife wanted to get off the lease for whatever reason, she was like, I don't know what y'all going through. She said, but all I know is this guy busts his ass. Now, this was a white woman. This is what she said. This was her exact words. She had to tell my ex-wife, another woman had to tell my ex-wife what I do. And I'm not being funny or racist, but this was a white woman telling you what your husband does. You know what I'm saying? And so me and her was in front of the landlord, this nice lady, and a cop. And so she was trying to get off the lease. And I was like, nah, I'm not trying to, No. We came in it together. No, I ain't letting you get off the lease. So I didn't. So I stayed as long as I could. And then we got in a car accident. I think she came back again. But she wasn't. Yeah, she was still on the lease. Because I'm wondering if she was or not. Yeah, she was. She didn't get off. Anyway, so she came back. And she was there after all this situation with the lease. That's why I was wondering if it had worked or not. But she came back after that. So she was back again with me, and I was driving. I had my license at the time. Now I got my driver's license. So I'm driving, and this one day down in June, I think, what was that? June 2006? That was probably June 2006. Yeah. So, this lady just pulled out in front of me, and it was a rainy day, and she just pulled out in front of me before I could even do anything. It was that close. She just darted out onto the main street we were driving on from this side road, and just like a movie, it was nothing I could do. And we hit her right on. Boom. Right on the side. That impact totaled the car. It totaled the car. It was nothing I could do. I could not avoid that accident. And so from there, she didn't have a car. It got totaled. And she just, frustrated as a woman would be, and then me and her not really getting along. She's already left one time, tried to get off the lease. It just didn't work out. So I went back to Florida. I went back to North Carolina again, got me another job, working at Bally Total's Fitness. I got this job, I remember October 31st. That's when I went apply for it. So I got the job, and she calls, and I'm working there. I'm working at Bally Total Fitness in North Carolina and Charlotte. So I'm like I always do. I'm working, making money, doing what I do. And she calls my mom. And so my mom calls me, and anytime my mom got very urgent news, it's a certain way she talks. And I knew this information was important. She said, Donnell, I'm gonna come pick you up. Like that. She's like, I got something to talk to you about. I was like, oh man, when my mom talks like that, I know it's something super serious. So how I am when my mom is like this, like, Mom, come on, tell me what it is. Like, what's going on? Like, so before we could even get back to her house to tell me this information, she was like, well, Ashley called and she is pregnant. And instantly, because of a child, I'm happy, right? I'm working, as you know, I'm working. So But my mom is happy. Now, remind you, this is after that apartment, the first apartment we had together. We done broke up. She want to get off the lease. The baby was conceived in that apartment. Okay. And so she was pregnant when I left, obviously. And so she contacts my mom, tells her she's pregnant. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. She's like, well, I'm thinking, well, all right, we talk, whatever. We talked through little things, and I decided to go back down. So again, I'm working. This time, like I said, I'm at Bally Total Fitness. So my boss is aware that I got a son. I'm happy about it and everything. And so he's going to give me a transfer. He was a cool guy, cool blonde, blue-eyed guy, young guy, fairly young guy, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. May have been like mid 20s to early 30s. Nice guy though. He gave me a transfer. I transferred down to Florida with Bally Total Fitness. That's the first time, it's not a lot of people can say that. That's the one and only time actually that I've transferred from one state to the other with a job. So that says something about my work ethics. That says something about my, how hard of a worker I am. They're not going to let some lazy guy transfer and go down to another website, another work site and be lazy. They're not going to let them do that. So me getting that transfer from North Carolina with Bally Total Fitness back to Tampa speaks for my work ethics. So we get back down there, and sure enough, she's totally pregnant. And I'm able to see my son born and everything. We took pictures and everything. And it was one of the most beautiful days of my life. And from that accident that I had before I went back to North Carolina, we got $7,000 out of that. $7,000 out of that accident that I had. Now, if I was the man I am now, being that I was driving, I would at least ask for 10% of that money. And I'm being super generous, at least $700. And that's to do whatever I want to do with it. That's generous, right? That's reasonable, right? $700 off of $7,000 just because I was driving. See, then I was more a young man. It's different. You're an older man now. You're like, still, I feel like, yeah, I should have had that. I should at least have 10% of that money based on me driving. I let her have all the money, and I ain't say nothing what should be done with it, nothing. And maybe because we was getting an apartment with a good deal of it. So we got a new apartment for our son. It was perfect. We had a kid. We got $7,000 back from that accident. We put it towards the apartment. And I don't know what we had left. She just didn't discuss things with me. And I'm the type of person that if you don't discuss it, then I'm not going to dig into your money. I'm not going to dig into what you have. I may ask you for what I need, but I'm not going to dig into what you have. It's a big difference. And it's people that do both. They ask you for stuff and they dig into what you have. They ask questions about what you have. So anyway, $7,000. We invest. We put some into a new apartment out by USF in Tampa. We're right down in the mall area in that place. We got a nice apartment. The hood is kind of round, but it's a college area too. So it's kind of a balance between college area / hood, And I could have got some money back during that time because one time I took my son to McDonald's and I was driving and And I had I went to an ATM to get some money out at a McDonald's in that area, in the USF area, right over there by the mall. With that McDonald's over there, and I had to take my son out. I didn't want to leave him in the car, and so I took him out, and I was getting ready to get some money out the ATM. This guy that works concerning the ATM, it's just satanic, man. Just happened to come up when I was trying to get some money out, and this particular ATM, it was the face of it was it the whole ATM opened up as a door. So the face of the ATM swung open to its right side as a door. He almost hit my son. This is an infant child. This man isn't even paying attention. I am standing there, but the way he did it, it wasn't like my mind was gone. I had my son right there with me. So if anything, I'm kind of like focusing on that. And then he opens the ATM and it almost hits my son. I filed a report against that company, and I should have followed through and got the money back and whatever. But whatever the case may be, it just didn't work out with that money. I could have got money back that time while I was living there. So that being said, me and her was going through difficulties again, and she wound up wanting to leave again. Like I said, her dad said, "Do you gotta leave?" This was that time. He was like, because I get tired of that boy cry wolf stuff, which means she's always saying something, but there's no fire. There's nothing there. She keeps coming back. So one time in that apartment, she took everything out, including taking my son. My routine was, I had a life. You know how people say get a life? I had a life. My life was working at Ballatola Fitness, dropping my wife off, dropping my son off at his grandmother's house, which is my ex-wife's mother, and taking the car for myself and going to work. So that was my routine. I had a life. And that's what I tell people. I had a life. She messed it up. Okay? Now, I'm not saying use that for an excuse forever, but that's the reason why I am in the situation I'm in. So that being said, during this time of that being my routine, right, she takes and wants to leave. She takes all the stuff out. I mean, by pickup truck. I'm watching all the stuff go out. She wants